be with so many good friends. It seems like 35 years has gone very quickly. There are times when it didn't seem that it went that quickly. But hearing that, hearing all that it has meant to people, and that's what's so wonderfully satisfying about this work, to have people come up and say to you, do you know what it's meant to us in our lives to be able to visit with you? Well, it's really marvelous. And I'd like to say good afternoon, and I'd like to say guten Tag. Is that right? Is that what? And you taught me to say, wie heißt du? Was that what you taught me? Could I ask you, wie heißt du? Could you tell me? Yeah. Could you tell me what your names are? Those of you who are from Germany? Yeah, all together. It sounds like a very nice song when everyone says his or her name together. Would you do it? Wie heißt du? Very good, thank you. And what is your name? Please, all together. Okay, thank you. I'm going to show the children some puppets after we have this adult speech. But right now, this is something that I have prepared for the grown-ups. There are many reasons I feel special about being in Washington. For one, my great-grandmother lived here, and I remember the first 10 years of my life visiting her, 4 generations together. She taught me to like cooked spinach. In fact, I had some this morning and I thought of her. She says, all you have to do is doctor it up a little bit. You'll see. And she taught me to take a long time to drink a glass of milk. One of her granddaughters is here today. Do you remember that? She said, take a long time to drink a glass of milk. Nana Gibbon. It doesn't sit well if you swill it down, she said. And she was healthy, living proof of what she taught. She never discussed her age. If anybody ever asked her how old she was, she would say 68. She said that even when her own daughter was 68. But the record showed that she lived to be over 100, and I know for a fact that she was reading the daily newspaper without her glasses the day before she died. That was 50 years ago. Nevertheless, you know, feelings about places, as well as feelings about practically everything else, get started long ago in each of our lives. Anyway, the excitement of visiting an interesting great-grandmother certainly spilled over into all the times I've come to Washington in my adult life. I remember when I was in my 30s, and I was invited to come here and testify before Senator Pastore and his committee requesting government support for the fledgling educational television stations. John Pastore. I was scared. By the time it came for me to speak, it was late in the day, and I could tell that the whole committee, including Senator Pastore, had already heard enough from those who had testified before me. So even though I had a prepared statement, I set it aside and told our story as quickly as I could. I'd like you to see the last couple minutes of that Washington occasion. It was a mighty special time. And that is a good feeling when you feel that you are in control of what's going on inside of you. I talked with a group of students from American University yesterday, and they're just near the end of their adolescence, and they know what it's like to have all of that turmoil going on inside of them. And they responded so lovingly to those of us who supported them by saying, congratulations on who you are becoming, because you are getting control of what's inside of you, and that is a good feeling. Well, after that day, Senator Pastore and I corresponded for years, and I learned a lot from him. His father had died when John was a teenager, and John had to go to work to help sustain his mother and his younger siblings. He had always wanted to be a medical doctor, but he realized that he couldn't do that by going to night school. But he could study law at night and work all day, and so he did. He put himself through college and law school and helped the rest of his family as well. But his love for medicine didn't fade away. John Pastore got married and had 3 children and became the senator from Rhode Island for many years. His 3 children grew up. One became a doctor, one became a nurse, and the 3rd one married a doctor. All kinds of attitudes flow from generation to generation. I remember years ago coming to the White House to watch Lyndon Johnson sign the Act for Public Television. In fact, I understand that there's a 25th reunion of everyone who worked at that administration going on in Washington today. Of course, we've come to Washington to tape scenes for the neighborhood. We've taped at the zoo and the place where people make postage stamps. And we've presented one of my zipper sweaters to the Smithsonian Institution. And not too long ago, we were invited to the Soviet embassy to celebrate the first exchange between Soviet and American children's television programs. I had gone to Moscow to be on Tatiana Vedeneva's Spokone Noci Malashi program, and she had come here. She had just arrived here, as a matter of fact, to be on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. At the embassy, we showed some of the Moscow studio visit, and I'd like you to see a few minutes of that now. I think it was Felicity who called that puppet détente. There were many people at the Russian embassy the day we visited, many children as well as adults. And one of the newspaper people told me that such crowds in there were practically unheard of. Nevertheless, the ambassador and his wife seemed very relaxed and having quite a good time. On the other hand, I was being pulled in all directions. People were asking Tatiana and me all kinds of questions. This was just before that great openness in the Soviet Union. Of course, I didn't know that such a major revolution was about to begin. Well, one reason I tell you all of this is that there was a columnist from a large newspaper who obviously had tried to get more of my time than I was able to give. I was so caught up in the interaction with our Soviet counterparts that this columnist misinterpreted my involvement, and as he wrote about that day, he called the whole affair a photo opportunity. When I read the clipping that someone sent me, I was reminded again that the basis of any healthy communication is listening, as well as having the time to be able to be yourself. Reporters have jobs to do, to get their stories to their papers on time. But reporters aren't machines. They're human beings who have their own inner stories. In fact, every story that they report is filtered through their own life experience, no matter how objective they may be. And that's good. It's good that communicators are not machines. I still wish that I hadn't been so distracted that day and had been able to be more aware of the needs of that columnist, more present to his moment. Not so much because of what he wrote, but because as the years go on, I want to be the best possible listener I can be. I want to be as far removed from being a machine as possible. Well, television's a machine, but those of us who appear on it must not be. As adroit as some television hosts and hostesses are at welcoming, interviewing, and saying goodbye to a guest in 3 minutes or less, I lament what existentially is communicated during such an interview. Whether we mass communicators intend it or not, we provide models for other people's communications. Picture and sound bites are not what I've ever wanted to communicate to anybody. There's nothing more fascinating for a human being to witness than the unfolding of a relationship between two persons. When that can happen in real life or in any kind of dramatic representation, it's very natural for us to be interested. Do you know why? Do you know why a 2-year-old is fascinated with mud or water play? Do you know why a 5-year-old might want to build a tall block building or act like a bride in a pretend wedding? I believe it's the same reason you and I are fascinated with the drama of two people developing a relationship. It's that at different ages, we human beings are working on different life tasks. 2-year-olds are working on control of their body fluids. 5-year-olds are working on some understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl, of what daddies are like, what mummies are like. And in our adult years, we are working on how to be in relationship to those around us. So, listening and trying to understand the needs of those we would communicate with seems to me to be the essential prerequisite of any real communication. And we might as well aim for real communication. One more association about Washington, D.C. Over 10 years ago, a mother and a father and a 5-year-old boy were sitting quite close to me as I had breakfast at that Howard Johnson's across from the Watergate. They smiled and waved, and I smiled and said, "Are you some of our television neighbors?" When they nodded, I went over to their table to meet them. Well, that was the beginning of a long relationship. That little boy, Jeff Erlinger, had multiple handicaps, but not a lack of confidence. Mr. and Mrs. Erlinger had obviously treated him with such affection and respect that he radiated his own special kind of sunshine. We had a good visit that morning, talking about the neighborhood characters and the sites the Erlingers were planning to visit in Washington. They had come from Wisconsin to show Jeff this wonderful city. Every year after that, Jeff's mom and dad sent progress reports, how he was doing in school, what new personal tasks he had been able to accomplish. And when he was about 11, They wrote to say that Jeff had gotten a new electric wheelchair. Well, I had been thinking about showing a wheelchair on the neighborhood for some time. I wanted children who used such chairs to feel represented in our television community. And I wanted children who didn't use those chairs to come to view them as something acceptable and respectable. So I called and asked if the Erlingers would consider coming to Pittsburgh and having Jeff demonstrate his special chair right on the television program. They accepted the invitation, and when they came to the studio, it was a great reunion. 6 years had passed since we had been together. And after our original greetings, I asked our television director to forego any rehearsal and simply tape Jeff's visit. All I told Jeff was that I would like him to show the children how he was able to work his chair. And also, I'd like us to sing his favorite neighborhood song together. In his usual way, he said, "Sure." And pretty soon, we had started. I'd like you to see that time that we had together. You know, I've always felt that feelings that are mentionable are so much more manageable. And I think that's what we try to do with the neighborhood, is to help make feelings mentionable. Well, last year, Jeff graduated from high school, and now he's enrolled in an independent living dorm at a local college. He never ceases to inspire me. I feel I've been greatly blessed by many people I've been able to meet and come to know. Some of you are in this room. Sure, I've worked hard. You don't choose a job in communications and expect not to work hard. But you can expect that you don't have to do it alone. To me, that's what communications is all about. Nobody should have to do it alone. And communications is communing in a community where people listen to themselves and others, where they try to understand what they've heard, and then respond with all the creativity and care that their life has allowed them to develop. I certainly wish you all well in all that you do, and thank you for your warm welcome today.